Like, do you even know who you are? I am black, biggity black, American, yes, but bigger than that. Spitting opinions, rooted in facts. Hope you aware the culture is bigger than plats. Used to be a summit, now we got a podcast. Gave you something, you ain't know you want it. Black American podcast, Black American podcast. You might hear something.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hi, Dottie.
Hi, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
All right, let me just get this started by introducing our panel topic and our structure for this. First, let me say hello and welcome everyone to Black America Summit 2. We are Black Edit again. And with us today for this particular panel is Dottie Hernandez, and this panel is going to focus on the healthy community dynamics. And so communities are built on interpersonal relationships. So rarely do we identify healthy versus toxic communal relationships. So we're going to unpack a little bit how to figure out those red flags over here. And so this structure is a little bit different than our previous ones. Dottie's only going to be with us for a half hour. So we're going to start with her. Dottie is a behavioral health case manager for the Sacramento Native American Health Center. She is a community health worker specializing in adult mental health, crisis intervention, and trauma-informed care and community resource building. So thank you, Dottie, for joining us for this panel.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here. So before I share my screen with you, I do have a small PowerPoint presentation. I just want to share a little bit about where I come from. I worked in the community health field for over 15 years. I'm certified and extensively trained in nonviolent crisis communication, meaning that when somebody is in crisis, rather than going straight for physical restraint or any kind of policing that involves, automatic violence, we communicate. We start first with communication, and we work together to de-escalate the situation in a way that doesn't result in physical harm or death. I do work currently at the Sacramento Native American Healthcare Center, which is in Sacramento, California. It's a nonprofit, federally qualified health center. So we really serve as a safety net for the poorest, most vulnerable individuals in the community. Unfortunately, in Sacramento, that generally means we are seeing a lot of Black and Brown individuals and families who are on Medicare and Medicaid and are seeing us because they're not able to get health care anywhere else.
Right.
So what I want to do before I get into the friendship piece of it or in the relationship piece of it is I want to briefly touch on how social determinants of health affect communities, because all of these stressors exist that disproportionately affect communities, especially Black communities and Brown communities, and Indigenous communities in different ways than they do white communities. So we have to be able to look at things kind of from a public health perspective, where you end up seeing how all of these stressors end up affecting the individual and the individual's ability to make meaningful, trusting relationships, and how that ends up bouncing back up to the community as a whole. Right. So I'm going to try to share my screen. Hopefully it works. Okay. Oh. Are you guys able to see me?
Yes, I can see that.
Okay, perfect. So, social determinants of health. This came from the Kaiser Family Foundation, which does an exceptional amount of research involving public health outcomes. If you see the social determinants of health, you'll notice across the top there are different ones. You'll see economic stability, neighborhood and physical environment, education, food, community, safety, and social context, and the healthcare system. So we know that there's a growing body of evidence that shows that social factors play a huge role in shaping health outcomes in communities. And that's what's called a social determinant of health. We've also observed that social determinants of health look different in communities comprised of people of color than they do in white communities. And I'm sure you can see as we start to look underneath some of these topics. For example, under community, safety, and social context, exposure to violence and trauma, policing, justice, and policy. Obviously, Black communities experience a higher exposure to violence and trauma at the hands of policing, and end up incarcerated. And because of that, it ends up coming down here to the bottom where you see functional limitations. People end up with chronic health issues. Their life expectancy goes down, and they, generally speaking, will have greater morbidity, meaning issues like diabetes, alcoholism, things like that are shaping their health outcomes and their ability to engage in their community. So social determinants of health disproportionately affect African Americans, and this is from the Century Foundation. Disparities still exist across health conditions when comparing African Americans and whites, including maternal mortality, infant mortality, heart disease, diabetes, cancer, and other health issues. Social factors including economic disadvantage, inequities in education, and lack of access to health care impact a person's ability to lead a healthy and productive life. For people in American society that experience racism and inequality in their daily lives and throughout their lifespan, the impact of social factors on health are the most grave. So, sorry, I'm going to go back. I apologize.
Oh, no, you're fine.
Let me just exit my screen. So, can you still see my screen?
No, it stopped sharing.
Okay. Maybe 1 second. Are you able to see it now?
Not yet. Oh, there we go.
Okay. So if you go on the Kaiser Family Foundation, they actually have this table that you can manipulate. It's the share of adults that experience loss of employment. And you can actually change this right here in order to change time periods. And you'll see the differences. So for example, experience loss of employment income in the past 4 weeks. This is for the time period between April 28th and May 10th of this year. You see that there's a big difference between the white percentage here and the Black and Hispanic. Another example, delayed medical in last 4 weeks due to pandemic. You see the same kind of pattern.
Right.
Symptoms of depression or anxiety. Again, you see the same type of pattern. And it's generally the same no matter how much you change it and you go through the time period.
Right.
So there's a big difference here that affects people's relationships. Healthy communities really are something that have to be built from the inside. So let me go ahead and go back to my presentation. So healthy communities really need to emphasize personal connections, meaning we're making them and we're maintaining them to empower individuals to avoid isolation. I'm sure everybody here, because of COVID, understands how difficult it is for us to maintain our social connections when a lot of us are working from home, or we're in a workspace where we're not allowed to really go out and visit our coworkers, or we're just isolated in general. Community leadership should be comprised of a mix of community individuals, not just those that are the most wealthy, educated, and healthy. This
Dottie,
fosters
I'm sorry to interrupt you,
Sure.
but we're still on the KFF slide.
Oh, no problem. Give me 1 second.
No problem.
So I'll go ahead and continue talking while I'm focusing on this.
Yes, please. Thanks.
So community building. So we already know that people have a tendency, especially Black and brown folks, not to see their doctor. And there's a lot of things that affect that. One of the reasons why is a lack of trust. So part of that means that we need to have individuals who are part of the Black community and the brown community who are leading the discussion in how to access healthcare. So if you just give me one moment. Okay. Are you able to see my screen now?
Yes, it's coming up. There we go.
Okay. Thank you. So let's go ahead and go back. So the emphasis on personal connections, we're making them and we're maintaining them to empower individuals to avoid social isolation. Community leadership should be comprised of a mix of community individuals, not just those that are the most wealthy, educated, and healthy. This helps foster trust. So when we go to see our doctors, we go to see our pastors, they should be people that look like us. It's a lot easier to go and talk to somebody about what's going on within your family. Or for example, if you're experiencing domestic violence, when you feel a connection towards the person that you're talking to, when they look like you, when they've come from your community, when they're able to speak your language, it makes a big difference. If you're coming in to see the same person who uses words and language that you don't understand, perhaps a lot of medical jargon, it's a lot less likely that you're going to want to talk to them about what's going on. There's a really big push in the primary care community to have doctors who are doing depression screenings with families and that are also asking about intimate partner violence. And it's extremely difficult because a lot of times if people come in to see their physician or see a nurse practitioner, it can take several times for them to finally admit what's going on before they say something. The other thing that's really helpful is if people have a friend that they can go to the doctor with and there's something going on, they have that friend there to support them. You're much more likely to talk to somebody about what's going on if you have somebody there to support you versus what happens if you're alone. Because oftentimes you'll end up feeling too scared to end up saying something. So that's really important. The other part of it is destigmatizing mental health, which allows for personal disclosure of experiences in safe settings. Within Black communities as well as brown communities, it's still very taboo to talk about mental health, to talk about not feeling well, to say, hey, I haven't been able to eat. I haven't been able to see my friends. I haven't been able to function or go to work. It's still very taboo. And part of that is because, okay, I feel like that. Where am I going to go? Who do I see? Do I tell my doctor that? Do I tell my pastor that? Do I tell my friend that? And if I tell my friend that, are they going to look at me differently? When we're building healthy communities, we need to see that our leaders are very transparent with us about their experiences. Personally, when I see a governor or I see a mayor running for office, who do I feel a deeper connection to? The person who's had a pretty privileged life, that's white, that's gone to the best schools, that won all the best medals, was on the debate team, etc. Or if I see someone of color who goes up there who maybe is, the son of immigrants or the son of a working class family of teachers, of nurses, or somebody that struggled and then got their way through it and is very transparent about how they made that happen, I'm more likely to trust that person. And if that person is giving me some pointers on what I should be doing in my life, for example, going to get my vaccine, going to town halls. The local town hall here in Sacramento is comprised of the wealthy white people in the community. I don't go there. I don't show up for that because I don't trust that those people are going to talk about things that are relevant to my family. And that's the bottom line. You rarely see people of color in town halls.
Right.
And the last part of this is to de-emphasize the de-emphasis on punishment and control. So one thing that we've been trying to do here is to emphasize more crisis management and intervention with professionals that are, trained in the mental health field than calling 911. Calling 911, many times you'll get paramedics, but the police almost always show up. And we all know what happens when the police show up. It usually escalates because people are afraid and they know what happens. They know how disproportionately violence gets turned on them by the police versus other people. So it's all about building relationships. And then we'll go ahead and drill down and move to the next slide.
Okay.
You guys can still see that, right?
Yes, the friendship is key.
Yes. So this is from Jasmine Guy. She says, the building of friendship, family, community, and love is complicated. We are so isolated in this country, no longer supported by tribes and villages. Black and brown communities, and I say that and I realize that's a big umbrella and it's much more, there's so much more to that than this giant monolith of color, so please forgive me. But we came from, and the Native American community here that we serve, came from small tribes and villages. And those were the social units that kept very close relationships, that made sure that their communities were healthy, had access to resources, and had access to the things they needed to survive. Because we exist in this big country where the mechanisms of power are so unequal, a lot of us suffer from intergenerational trauma and an inability to navigate ourselves within that context, because we no longer have that small tribe or village that holds us up. When, genetically and on a hereditary basis, we weren't born like that. So there's a lot of social isolation, and we have to really fight to maintain our friendships. So continuing, actually, I'll go ahead and give you guys an example. So one of the things that I do here, oftentimes a primary care physician will call me. We're all in the same building. If they receive a call that they're not really sure what to do with, and it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the medical condition. There is this one African-American patient who is very isolated. He has a cognitive disability. He does not have access to his parents because they live in Oakland and he doesn't possess a driver's license. And there's no way for him to get transportation to see them. And because of COVID, he's been stuck in his group home. And the result of that has been that he is not able to go to the day program that he generally goes to, that provides him with support, where he can see his friends and where he can build some vocational skills. So what does he do? He calls his doctor every day. He calls his doctor every single day because he's isolated, he's lonely, and she's someone he can trust who knows him. So she calls. So my part in that is trying to find ways to keep him from being so isolated, because he's suffering from, this deep loneliness that is a result of COVID, but also a result of our community being so fractured that we don't have systems in place to keep, individuals like him that have special needs connected. So that's a big piece of it that I think is lacking. So moving forward, we'll go to my last slide. Relationships that are healthy versus unhealthy. And I think this is something that most of us should connect with.
Right.
So a healthy relationship has trust. We've talked about building trust already with leadership, but it's also something that we develop with our friends, and it's really earned. It's not something you really get right away. It's something that's earned. You show up for the people in your life.
Right.
Versus an unhealthy relationship, which fuels fear. If you find that you are afraid to call somebody, to call a friend, to call a partner, that's usually a major red flag that there's something wrong. In healthy relationships, it's supportive and it's not controlling. So you have your own agency and autonomy within your relationship, because that person is encouraging you to grow, and they're not violating your boundaries. One of the biggest things that I see here that's discussed in therapy is that people feel like, I want to go to college, I want to do this, I want to do that, but my boyfriend won't let me, or I'm afraid that he'll get mad at me. That's a form of control. And if somebody loves and appreciates you, they're not going to need to control you, because they love you and accept you enough to want you to reach your full potential.
Thank you for pointing that out, because a lot of people, I feel like, don't realize that control isn't always, physical or violent.
Absolutely. The other thing, too, that's not mentioned here is that the ability of a person to control you has nothing to do with your level of intellect. So often, I'll use women as an example. You'll see women who will talk about when they've, experienced domestic abuse. And oftentimes it'll be that the guy never hit her. But he did abuse her in many other ways. He controlled her life. And usually it just creeps up on a person, and they'll say things like, I can't believe I have a college degree, I'm too smart for this. There's actually no correlation between your level of intellect and your ability to, or your propensity for abuse, because it can really spring up on you that easily. The other thing in a healthy relationship is that you should be able to tell a significant other when something isn't okay. So there isn't a fear of conflict. Conflict is supposed to be a source of growth, not a source of punishment. Like, I'm not going to tell him that I don't like when he does this because I'm afraid of how he'll respond, is generally a major sign of abuse. The other part that I want to emphasize on the bottom of the left-hand square is that it doesn't try to change the other person. Sometimes people who will abuse will say, well, if you just acted like this, or you just did that, I would be nicer to you. A big part of that means, again, that the person is trying to control you. Usually that'll be in the form of gaslighting, which I'm sure is something a lot of us have heard. Gaslighting meaning that we have a tendency, the abuser will tend to make you feel like you're the person who's crazy, or that you're wrong for having your emotions or your feelings about something, and try to turn that on you. And so I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing this. Go back to, okay. Are you still seeing my screen? I just want to make sure.
Oh, no, it's just you.
Okay, great. So part of what I know I'm already coming up on time, I want to emphasize is that in order for us to build healthy relationships within communities, there really has to be a sense of connectedness. We have to continue to join summits like this so that we can stay connected to each other, so that we can communicate. Also, if you're in an abusive relationship, but you continue to be connected on forums like this in whatever way that's safe for you, the chances of you breaking that relationship and being safe and being able to get away from that type of abuse is more likely because you're not as isolated. And generally speaking, those are the people that go on to be community leaders, or people that have survived a significant trauma and we're able to come out of it. And those are the people that we really need to see in terms of leadership. So I know that was like a really fast view of like a real macro level social determinant down to friendships. I kind of had to smush it all together. But I have a couple of minutes if people have questions. I do want to tell people that in most areas, I know in Sacramento, there are domestic violence shelters, and more community health centers like mine have ways that you can tell people that something is going on without directly saying, hey, I'm being abused. There are screening forms. Again, I recommend if you go to the doctor with a friend. I partner with an embedded advocate we have from a nonprofit agency called Weave, which provides services to women, not just women, also men, anyone who reports domestic violence, where they will come up with a plan for you to get you safe and to go into a safe house where you can go, you can bring your children, you can bring your pets, and they come up with a safety plan for you. So that's part of what we do, but we really need to figure out how to build community in positive ways that combat the amount of racial disparity that communities of color experience. So
I want to thank you again so much, Dottie, for offering your perspective and your knowledge on how we can build community and tribes again.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and then for our next half hour, we're going to be bringing in Taylor Bass. Taylor is a holistic health and wellness educator. She works for Exceptional Wellness, Inc. She's also a life coach and a yoga instructor down in Houston, Texas. She supports her clients in cultivating self-awareness, personal responsibility, and physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual growth. Thanks. Hi, Taylor. Thank you for joining us.
Hello. Thank you. So hi, everyone. My name is Taylor Bass, and as Jessica said, I am a health and wellness educator and life coach. And my goal is to help people reach their fullest potential to become the best versions of themselves through nurturing their physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. And so I'm coming here today to provide you with some tools that will help you, that you can use anytime after tense situations, whether that be at work or at home, with your family, or out in the community. So too often when something stressful happens, we tend to react as opposed to respond. And so maybe you've said something that you didn't mean, or you acted impulsively, making a choice that later you wish that you hadn't. We aren't always our best selves when we're feeling angry or triggered or anxious or overwhelmed.
Right.
So the best thing to do in these situations is to pause and take a breath. That's the first step to learn how to respond as opposed to react.
Mhm.
Um,
And I'm sorry, would you mind giving us an example of like the difference between reacting and responding, maybe?
Sure. So let's say that you are in an argument and someone says something that upsets you. And your
Mhm.
immediate response, it could be a trauma response, it could be something from your childhood that it bubbles up. And so immediately you're defensive or
Mhm.
you call them a name or something. And
Mhm.
you're like, well, in that case, just don't talk to me at all or whatever. Like,
Mhm.
that's not beneficial, it's not helpful for the situation, but it's something that sometimes just comes out because we feel attacked.
Mhm.
um and so in that situation, rather than responding in that way, which
Mhm.
might just make the other person more upset, which might just leave you both feeling unfulfilled in
Right.
whatever the issue was, take a moment, pause, um, take a breath, try to recognize what emotion you're feeling,
Mhm.
what trigger that the comment kind of poked, and maybe it's a feeling of abandonment or a feeling of
Mhm.
not being seen or understood.
Right.
And so if you can name that, um, it's helpful to then
Mhm.
choose your response wisely. um, And so, what I'm going to do today is I'm going to help us practice mindfulness.
Okay.
And mindfulness has kind of been a buzzword in the
Mhm.
past few years. And so, in case you don't know what it is, it basically, at its simplest, just means um, to be fully aware of the present moment,
Mhm.
not anxious about the future, not ruminating about the past,
Mhm.
not daydreaming or dissociating, trying to escape from what's going on, but
Right.
really sitting in the here and now and feeling your emotions, feeling your sensations,
Mhm.
um, thinking your thoughts
Right.
without trying to escape them.
Mhm.
Um, so, the easiest way to practice mindfulness is to start by focusing on the breath.
Okay.
Yeah. Breathing is the basic mechanism that keeps us alive. And
Mhm.
when we are in a stressful situation, the sympathetic nervous system activates our fight or flight response.
Mhm.
So our brain releases adrenaline, our heart rate gets up, our blood pressure goes up.
Right.
The lungs, actually, the bronchioles in the lungs expand so that more oxygen can get in your lungs to go to your brain. Um, uh, Energy is released in your body so that in a life or death situation, you have what you need to save your life, save someone
Mhm.
else's life, do whatever you need to do to keep yourself alive in a
Right.
dangerous situation. um, this is very helpful evolutionarily, but
Right.
often we're not often being chased by a bear or
Right.
being about to be hit by a car. So
Right.
sometimes our body responds in a way where it's extra stressed, but it's not in line with what the situation is. So if you are in an argument like we discussed earlier, or
Mhm.
you got negative criticism at work, or
Right.
um, you are just feeling overwhelmed by housework and car problems, and you have just this heightened level of stress,
Mhm.
that's not helpful um, long term.
Yeah.
So we need to be able to learn how to activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which is essentially putting the brakes on that stress response.
Mhm.
And so, um, when you when I think about the parasympathetic nervous system, I think of it. Some people call it the rest and digest response.
Okay.
So it's kind of your body just focusing on what it needs to do to stay alive without
Mhm.
added adrenaline, added effects.
Okay.
And so today I'm going to teach you a couple of ways that you can activate your parasympathetic nervous system.
Okay.
So that when you are feeling stressed or overwhelmed or anxious, you can use these tools to reintroduce calm, reintroduce peace, um, lower your heart rate, lower your blood pressure. And the best way to start with that is by focusing on your breathing.
Okay.
And so, one thing that I do want to point out is that a lot of times in society, when we are breathing, we tend
Mhm.
to kind of suck in. Where
Mhm.
there's society is very fat phobic. We all want to look really thin,
Mhm.
and so we walk around all day
Right.
sucking in our stomachs.
Right.
Um, and that's not how we get the best oxygen. That's not
Right.
how we nourish our bodies.
Mhm.
So for this exercise, I will ask you all to focus on when you breathe in, allow your belly to expand. Um,
Mhm.
so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to practice diaphragmatic breathing. And what
Okay.
that means is that most of the time when we breathe, our breath is pretty shallow. We just kind of
Mhm.
breathe in, breathe out, and our chest rises a little bit, but we're not fully experiencing the full capacity of our lungs.
Mhm.
And
Okay.
so, what diaphragmatic breathing is your diaphragm is underneath your lungs, and when you take a large, deep breath,
Mhm.
your diaphragm expands.
Okay.
It falls down in your stomach, which allows for your lungs to have more room to expand as well. Um,
Mhm.
and so, when you take this big, deep breath, um, it activates the vagal nerve and it helps you to calm your body. So the
Okay.
first thing we're going to do is called a square breath.
Okay.
Um, it is fairly simple. It's called a square breath because it has four equal parts.
Okay.
So first we will breathe in for 4 counts. You'll hold it at the top for four
Mhm.
counts. You'll breathe out for 4 counts and then hold it at the bottom for 4 counts.
Okay.
Alrighty. So place your right hand on your heart and your left hand on your belly. Make sure
Okay.
that when you breathe in, your belly is expanding. Alrighty. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Again. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. So this is a quick and easy breath that you can take anytime, anywhere. You can do it sitting at a stoplight,
Mhm.
on your drive home. You can do it, just do a quick square. If you're in an argument, like hold on, let me take a
Right.
breath before I say something I don't mean. It's just a really quick and easy way to kind of gather yourself um, in a moment of tension.
Right. And in
Um,
anyone that might be skeptical, I just did it and I feel like super relaxed.
awesome, awesome. I love it. Um, so, in addition to increasing our oxygen intake, the next
Mhm.
big thing about mindfulness is observation. Um, so, I will invite you to breathe with me again. This
Mhm.
time, I want you to close your eyes and we're not going to count, we're not going to hold. I just want you to inhale through your nose and
Mhm.
exhale through your mouth and feel, pay attention to how it feels in your body.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay.
So as we inhale, you just inhale as comfortably as you can. It doesn't have to be too deep. Um, feel your chest rise. Um, feel the coolness of the breath as it hits the back of your throat. Maybe you notice that it feels cooler as you inhale and warmer as you exhale. As I inhale, I'm noticing kind of a sensation in my ears. Um,
Yeah, I'm noticing like a tickling in the back of my throat.
yeah. And that's something like when you're going about your normal day, you're not thinking about these sensations.
Mhm.
But mindfulness is all about kind of, okay, let's not think about what's going on outside of us. Let's focus on me. Let's focus on what I'm feeling.
Mhm.
And so you start to notice things that you maybe didn't notice before.
Right.
So take a moment to further relax,
Okay.
unclench your jaw, lower your shoulders down from your ears, maybe shake your body a little bit, feel yourself inside of your body. And you can bring your attention to your hands. Maybe they're still on your heart and your belly, or maybe you rest them on your knees. Um, really pay attention to the sensation of your fingertips on your chest or your knees or wherever they're resting. Now think about any smells in the room. Maybe there's some fresh laundry, or maybe you can still smell what someone microwaved for lunch. What does your skin feel like? Is there a fan in the room that you can feel the air blowing? Are you sweating? Can you taste anything? Maybe it's just the taste of your saliva, or maybe you had something really great for lunch and you can still taste it. Maybe you can even imagine what you want to eat for dinner and you can taste it on the tip of your tongue. What do you hear? I hear the fan above me in the room. I hear the hum of the air conditioning. I hear the sound of my hands rubbing against my pants. Maybe you hear the sound of your breath. So, this technique is called grounding. So, anytime that you are in a situation where you feel anxiety or stress, you can take a moment to focus on your five senses: what you taste, what you smell, what you feel, what you see, what you hear. And that will help you bring yourself back into your body, connecting with yourself, activating the parasympathetic nervous system, lowering your heart rate, slowing your breathing, bringing you back to calm. All right. My next technique is called body scanning.
Okay.
You're welcome to keep your eyes closed or you can open them. Um, this technique works by bringing your attention to your physical body. So similar to the grounding where we focused on our senses, that's partially our body, partially our surroundings. This time we're going to focus on creating sensations within our body. So I invite you to close your eyes and bring your attention to your head. Um, you can start by furrowing your brow or your forehead. Um, squint your eyes. Flare your nose. If you can, wiggle your ears. Open and close your mouth. Roll your neck from side to side. Now bring your attention to your shoulders. You can raise them, and as you lift them up, feel the tension in your back. You can go up and down, or you can go up and just hold. That feels really nice for me right now. Now you can bring your attention to your arms. You can flex your biceps. You can do them at the same time or one at a time. Roll your wrists. Now you can spread your fingers wide and alternate between wide fingers and fists. Moving on to your chest. If you want to place your hands on your heart again, you can breathe normally, or you could breathe deeply and just feel the rise and fall of your chest. And then moving to your belly, you can keep breathing, just feel the rise and fall of your abdomen. Bring your attention to your back. Try to sit up as straight as you can. I like to place my hands on my knees and kind of pull back so that my chest comes forward. And now we'll move on to the legs. Depending on how you're sitting, this could be different for each of you. I like to squeeze my glutes. You can do them at the same time or one and then the other. If your legs are straight, you could try lifting your kneecaps to tighten your quads. And finally, we'll move to your feet. You can flex them and point them. You can roll your ankles, curl your toes. And recognize that for the past 5 minutes or so, you have been completely in your body. When you draw your attention to your physical body, you become more in tune with yourself, and you place a barrier between yourself and any external stimuli that may have been causing you stress. And then my last technique, we're running short on time, but for the last technique, it is visualization.
Okay.
This technique can be a little harder for some people, but if you keep practicing it, you get better at it. And so visualization calls for you to focus on, use your imagination. So it's good for when you have a little bit of extra time. The activities that we've been doing, you can do pretty quickly whenever during the day. I like to use visualization at night, kind of after work. I usually like to lie down when I'm doing it, but you can do it sitting up as well. So once again, I'd like to ask you to close your eyes and go on a little quick journey with me. So imagine yourself outside on a nice day. The sun is shining, but it's not too hot or humid. The sky is blue. There's a slight breeze and the air smells crisp. Your vision won't look like anyone else's because you're going to your happy place. That could be on the beach, listening to the waves. It could be a secluded meadow, or lying out by the pool, or at the top of a mountain. Your place can be a place you visit a lot, or it could be just an ideal place in your imagination. Wherever your place may be, I invite you to take a seat. Feel the ground beneath you. Feel the air on your skin. Feel the sunshine on the top of your head, on your face, on the back of your neck. Listen to the birds, or the waves, or the swishing of the grass. Really set the scene and add any details that you like. Maybe your dog is resting its head on your lap. Maybe you smell your favorite flowers nearby. But when you're in this place, nothing else matters. Not the workday, not what's for dinner, not what bills are due. When you are here, there is nothing expected of you. Your only objective is to just be. Unfurrow your brow, rest your jaw, unsuck your stomach, and let the weight of the world sink out through your seat. Perhaps you are able to have a free and clear mind. That's really difficult for some people, and that's okay. If you notice that you're feeling emotions about something that happened yesterday, or thoughts about what needs to be done this evening, that's okay. Don't judge yourself for it. Just redirect and try to bring yourself back to your surroundings. As you've been relaxing, a cloud has appeared. You didn't notice because your eyes were closed and you were in tune with yourself. Slowly, it starts to rain. And as the rain hits your skin, you start to feel lighter as all the stresses and worries of today begin to wash away. As you breathe in, you smell the rain. And as you breathe out, you release your tension. As the rain stops, you feel relief. The cloud floats away, revealing the sun again. The warmth returns and dries your skin. You feel the sun's warmth on your face, and without a doubt, you have a feeling that you are loved, you are important, you are worthy, and you matter. At this moment, you are safe and you are secure. Sit with this feeling. I want you to know that you can revisit this place and this feeling anytime that you need a reprieve. As I invite you to reorient yourself and join me in the present moment, Wiggle your fingers, wiggle your toes, roll your shoulders, take a big stretch. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes and join me back here. Alrighty, so I want to thank everybody for joining me today and learning these skills. I hope that you are able to take them with you and use them in everyday situations. And if you would like to follow me, my full name is up here, Taylor Elaine Bass. So on Instagram, that is my handle, Taylor Elaine Bass. And on Twitter, it's just Taylor Elaine, my first and middle name. So thank you.
All right. I want to thank you again so much, Taylor, for the soothing exercises.
Absolutely.